What's going on, YouTube? And today we're going to be talking about week 13 of college football with the CFP. Each week, well, until the end of this week and next week, because that's the left for CFPs, and then the week after with bowl games and all that. We'll talk about my CFP rankings, what my thoughts on it, and then I'll give you guys 5 games that are within these ranked teams to pay attention to for certain reasons. Now, this is the only week I'm going to be able to do this since I'm starting this so late. When next season comes around, I will do it a lot better with this, and I'm going to take this into college basketball as well. But this week is going to be the craziest week of college football that we have ever seen in a long time, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and get into the rankings. So, of course, Georgia was number 1. Georgia's the best team in college football. You cannot tell me otherwise. Stetson Bennett looks really good. Zamir White, is that the running back's name? I've watched Georgia, but they just dominate too much. Is it Zamir White? Yeah, Zamir White looks really good. My favorite person from Georgia is Ladd McConkey. I don't even care that he's not a top prospect receiver-wise. I like Ladd. Ladd is solid. As a freshman. This dude is a freshman. And he doesn't play like a freshman. I also like Stetson Bennett. I didn't like JT Daniels when he was playing, and then Zamir White just looks like a dog. Ohio State at 2. I disagree. If you don't know, I am an Ohio State football fan. I disagree. I think we should be 3. I think Alabama deserves to be 2. Don't get me wrong, Ohio State does have some great wins. Within the last 5 games, we've had beaten 4 ranked teams at the time, 3 ranked teams. I'm thinking of the Michigan game, but 3 ranked teams at the time, including a top 10 team and 2 top 20 teams, all of them being Big Ten opponents. I don't think Ohio State right now is a better team than Alabama. Don't get me wrong, if I wanted to do a side-by-side comparison, I say that CJ Stroud is better than Bryce Young. I say that Travion Henderson this season is better than Brian Robinson. Olave and Wilson are better than Michi and Williams. I'd say that their tight end is better than Jeremy Ruckert. Offensive line, we have one good offensive line in Nicholas Petit-Frere. They have Evan Neal and the other one I can't think of. Defensively, they're better. They have a better defense, which is what takes it better. Now, I think I'm the only one that says that C.J. Stroud's better than Bryce Young. I like Bryce Young. I think C.J. Stroud's the Heisman this year, though. It could be full bias for all I know, but I think Stroud's the Heisman right now, and then it's Young, and then it's Caleb Williams, and then it's Kenneth Walker. We'll get into Michigan State in a minute, but in my opinion, Ohio State should be 3, Alabama 4. Ohio State 3, Alabama 2. Cincinnati at 4. I had a conversation this morning with some buddies of mine in Discord. If you all know JoJo, a good friend of mine. I was talking to him this morning, and we were talking about Cincinnati, and I was talking about, am I the only one that's not a fan of Desmond Ridder? I don't like Desmond Ridder. I don't like his gameplay. I don't like his style. It could be a Desmond Ridder thing. It could be a receiver thing. But, Alec Pierce, Tyler Scott, I like them. I just don't like Desmond Ridder as a quarterback for some reason. Michigan, of course, that's going to be part of my top 5 games this week. Michigan looks very well this year. I'm actually very nervous with playing Michigan this week. Usually I'm, kind of relaxed playing Michigan. No. I'm nervous for Ohio State playing Michigan. Cade McNamara looks really good this year. And even so, by the way, Alan Bowman, that's a good name. That's the guy from Texas Tech, I think. Cornelius Johnson's really good. Dalen Baldwin, I think, is underrated. But this right here was what bothers me, as Ohio State's offense goes up against this defense, which has arguably a top 3 defensive draft prospect, depending on where you like people, in Aiden Hutchinson, who is being put in conversations as the number 1 overall pick over Kayvon Thibodeau, Derek Stingley, Kyle Hamilton, who else was in there, and a bunch of other people. But the first overall pick, I feel like, is one of like 5 or 6 guys, depending on what you need. But Michigan at 5, 6 is Notre Dame. I can't speak on Notre Dame. I have not ever since Ian Book left. I have not watched a Notre Dame game. I don't find them interesting that much. They don't play anybody. They've played two ranked teams. They lost to Cincy, beat Wisconsin. They destroyed Wisconsin. I just don't find them interesting. I do like Kyron Williams, though, the running back. Kyron Williams is a dog, and Kyle Hamilton's a dog. That's like the only 2 players that I've liked / looked at. Because Kyle Hamilton is the best safety in this draft. Oklahoma State, I watched their game versus Oklahoma's this week. Who did they play last week? Okay, I did not watch an Oklahoma State game. I'm supposed to watch the Oklahoma game this week. So this is another team that I kind of can't really speak about, because if I don't watch them and I don't watch gameplay on them, then I can't really speak about them. So we'll skip over them. Baylor, we're going to talk about briefly. So Baylor, the only game that I really watch is the Oklahoma game. And there are a couple people on Baylor that I'm a fan of. Jerry Bohannon, Treston Ebner, I really like. RJ Sneed on the offensive side, and then on the defensive side, there's like 2 people I like, which is Christian Morgan and TJ Franklin. Ole Miss, at 9, I like Ole Miss. I think Matt Corral is a top 2 quarterback, and he's not 1. I think Malik Willis is better. Oklahoma, I've put my feelings out there on Oklahoma. Spencer Rattler is extremely overrated, which I've been saying since the beginning of the year. I liked Caleb Williams in the beginning of the year way better than Spencer Rattler. And other than that, Marvin Mims is probably my favorite player from like that college. Oregon, coming off that loss against Utah, I still think Oregon is a very good team. Anthony Brown, the quarterback, is amazing. Travis Dye is going to be an elusive halfback. Michigan State, coming off that loss against Ohio State, they just looked terrible. Shout out Switchwave, by the way, for being a Michigan State fan. We talked during the game when I was streaming it. He expected it. I was kind of expecting a lot closer of a game. Kenneth Walker is a top 5 Heisman finalist, in my opinion. Peyton Thorne's going to be just fine. That defense does need a little bit of work, though. BYU, I can't really speak about. Wisconsin, can't speak about. Texas A&M, only game I watched was against Alabama, and it was like the second half. Can't really speak about. Iowa, underrated. Iowa is a good team this year that's not getting much conversation. And it's actually kind of sad how Iowa's getting no conversation right now. Just from the fact of watching Iowa, it's like a small sample size, but Sam Laporta and Tyler Goodson are 2 people on that team that needs more respect. You look, Spencer Petras is not throwing the ball. Alex Padilla is throwing the ball a little bit too. Tyler Goodson, he is a great running back. I don't understand why he's not put into higher conversations. I think he's a sophomore, right? He's a junior. So he should be put in higher conversations, in my opinion. Spencer Petras, like I said, is okay. Alex Padilla is pretty good. Sam Laporta's I like. And then Jack Campbell, Seth Benson, Matt Hankins, all of them I really like. Kenny Pickett is a top 5 quarterback this draft, is what we've learned. And what I've learned is that he's top 5. He's not top 3. I think my top 3 was Malik Willis, Matt Corral, and I'm forgetting a name now. Anyway, my 4 was Kenny Pickett. Pittsburgh's just a good team. You'll see them in the ACC championship in 2 weeks. Or not this Saturday, but the Saturday after on the 4th. They might be going up against a team later on in here. Either that team or another team that's also in here that we haven't talked about yet. It's actually this team, Wake Forest. Sam Hartman is the real deal. I think Sam Hartman is going to be just fine. I know a lot of people are putting him down for the couple losses he has, especially against Clemson. Let's also remember that Clemson still has Dabo Swinney. Just because they have those 3 losses does not mean they are not a good team. they are still a good team. We'll get to the quarterback in a second because I got a lot to say about DJ Ukulele. But, or however you say his name. But, all right. Utah, big win against Oregon, should be higher. I don't care if you're a 3-loss team. They should be over Wake Forest, in my opinion, and arguably over Pitt. Utah is a dominant football team that is just, they're streaky. They had 2 losses to start the season off after beating Weber State against 2 teams that are actually pretty solid. Came back and won 3, upsetting Arizona State. Lost to Oregon State and has now won 4 in a row. 2 of them only giving up 7 and scoring in total 90 points. So 90-14 in 2 games. This team is dominant. I don't understand why they're not being talked about more. And it's all because they have 3 losses. It just sucks. Cameron Rising and Tavion Thomas is a 1-2 punch. I watched the game against Oregon last Saturday. Tavion Thomas is turning into one of my favorite running backs in college football. He's dominant. Moving on, NC State, can't talk about. San Diego State, can't talk about. UTSA, don't even want to talk about. Clemson, DJ Ukulele is overrated. I do not like DJ. Houston, can't talk about. Arkansas, can't talk about. So, that took a little longer than I expected, but the biggest what you got out of here is that I think these rankings are not terrible. The only one I think is Alabama should be over Ohio State, and Utah should be in this 16 to 18 range. I guess the only other thing I'd say is that I feel like Michigan State did not drop as much as I thought they would. I thought they put them down here where like Wisconsin and Texas A&M is, but they only dropped down to 12, which is still a good ranking for them. So now I'll give you all my top 5 games this week, and it should be an easy top 5. So I'll just they're not in order, but Iowa versus Nebraska is a big game for the Big Ten West. That game's just a big game for, in total, if Iowa does win, they need Wisconsin to lose, which is another big game, which Wisconsin does go up against Minnesota. So Wisconsin will find out before that game if they will need to win or lose automatically. If Iowa does lose, then by head-to-head, Wisconsin will clinch the Big Ten West after beating Iowa earlier this year. So that's my first game. My second game is kind of an important one, which is my number 4 game of the week, or number 3 game of the week, because Wisconsin, Minnesota is number 4. And this one has nothing to do with titles, just because it's a big game. Alabama versus Auburn. Always a fun time in the Iron Bowl. Such a good game is going to be between these two, in my opinion. You have Bo Nix versus Bryce Young. Bo Nix, of course, having a ton of time facing Alabama with them in his senior year, or junior year. And he's actually not playing. I forgot about that. So, yeah, that game's just fun for the longevity of it. Number 2 is going to be Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State, and not because it's just Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State, because those two rely on each other to make the Big 12 championship. The winner of that game will be automatically given a spot in the Big 12 championship, and the loser of that game will need to hope that they have beaten Baylor during this week. To break it down, Oklahoma has not beat Baylor this year. So to put into perspective, if Oklahoma State were to win this game, then Oklahoma would need for Baylor to lose to Texas Tech, which I don't see happening. Do I see them covering the spread? I kind of do, but do I see them losing? No. And then the number 1 game of the week, which I think is the most obvious, is Ohio State versus Michigan. Winner of that game will play either Wisconsin or Iowa in the Big Ten Championship next week. But the big thing about that game is the history between the two teams. If you go on YouTube and look up Ohio State versus Michigan, you will find videos all over the internet of fights, brawls. In 2013, they had almost an entire brawl in the locker room before the game even started. These two have bad blood versus each other, and it's going to be an insane game now that both teams are top 5 teams, both fighting for CFP spots. I honestly believe whoever wins this game will be guaranteed a CFP spot. Due to either Ohio State keeping up the dominant season or Michigan State pulling up the big upset. I do think the spread is a little bit too outside the box. I thought the spread was going to be like 3, and the spread's 8.5 right now. I think this is going to be an offensive-driven game with Michigan's defense kind of being the factor in here. Ohio State's defense, I have like no confidence in. That's why the CFP scares me in total, because our defense has been very streaky and playing to their opponents. So I'm kind of hoping that kind of helps us. And I said last week for the Ohio State-Michigan State game that a team with a good running back destroys offenses, or destroys our defense. While last week I said that I thought Kenneth Walker was going to have 15 carries for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had like 10 carries for 36 yards. We finally found a way to stop the rush, and I think our passing defense is not the top in the league, but like if you wanted to tier it, like second tier, I think our passing defense is pretty good. It's the rushing defense that scares me, but our offense makes up for it. CJ Stroud has looked amazing his last couple games. Trayvon Henderson is only a freshman. And then our best receiver is Jackson Smith-Njigba, which it should be great Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave, but because we've been blowing out teams, they've been sitting them. So I recommend if you have the time this Saturday, tune into that game 1,000%. It's in the big house, so you're going to see a lot of energy between the two teams and the fans. With that being said, I appreciate you all watching this video. I know it's a little longer than it should be. I had a lot to talk about with the end of the season coming up. Make sure you subscribe if you're new. Join the crew. Hit this like button down below and comment any teams that you think are overrated, underrated, and players. I appreciate you all. Follow all the socials below. We'll be live this week with a bunch of college football sidecasts. With Iowa versus Nebraska on Friday. And then Saturday we might be doing like an all-day thing because we're not really doing anything Saturday. So go ahead and follow all the socials. And yeah, I will see you all in the next video. Peace.